I just want to welcome everyone to our weekly live podcast of this sharing from our Come Follow Me reading that our leaders, church leaders, have given us to learn, study, and to share with each other every day and every week of our lives. And the reading for this year has been from the Book of Mormon. Last year was the New Testament, and the year before was Old Testament. And I just realized that this is my third year doing this live podcast in my Facebook page and my YouTube page. And I just want to welcome everyone to this weekly podcast. And this week's covers the reading from January 8th to 14th of 2024. And this has been the third year, as I mentioned, of doing this. And this is volume 81. This is volume 81 of recording this every week so I can share with my fellow Tongans. And lately, the past 2 or 3 weeks, I just wanted to start it with the English language and then switch back to my Tongan language. And before we go on, the reading is taken from 1 Nephi chapter 1 to chapter 5. 1 Nephi from the Book of Mormon, chapter 1 to chapter 5. And the title says, I will go and do. I will go and do. And it talks about, this is the beginning of the reading from the Book of Mormon. We covered last week the title pages of introductory pages of the Book of Mormon. Now we are getting into the real reading, starting from 1 Nephi 1 to 5. It talks about a family. This family was living in a world of wickedness, but the Lord promised them that if they would follow him, he would lead them to safety. Along the way, they had good moments and bad moments, great blessings and miracles, but they also had arguments and contention. Overall, there is power in these imperfect families' examples of faith. As per reading, they always provide ideas for learning at home and at church. And I pick one of those ideas to just stay with that one. And I just cover it in my own language. But now, since we are beginning it or start in English, I have to think of which one to take and also translate it into my own Tongan language. I picked number 3. It says, God will prepare a way for me to do his will. And number 5 says, I was led by the Spirit, based on 1 Nephi chapter 4, verse 5 to 18. And I was thinking which one to cover. I said to myself, just leave the number 3 and file to my Tongan portion of this podcast, but just concentrate on number 5 as taken from 1 Nephi 4, 5 to 18, titled, I Was Led by the Spirit. I was thinking of this one because it is taken from this chapter 4 of 1 Nephi. That's when Nephi tried to get the brass plates from Laban. As you read it in your own time for the scripture reading. But I'm just giving you the highlights of what happened. As I try to find the real answer that gives me satisfactory feelings about what happened in 1 Nephi chapter 4. Because yesterday I always listen to the podcast of those professors from Brigham Young University, BYU, and then I digest those messages and then try to translate and to share it with my people, which are the Tongan people. And yesterday I heard from someone was criticizing the manual for year 2024 for not covering the time in 1 Nephi chapter 4 about when Nephi tried to obtain the brass plates from Laban. He was talking almost half of his podcast talking about why this portion of the reading didn't cover by the manual. And I heard from another podcast and I got the answer. The previous one didn't get the answer. But the second one that I listened to yesterday, which is Sunday, my best day of listening to these podcasts, and then I digest them and bring them to my podcast on this Monday morning, which is January 8th to the 14th of this week, which is Sunday. And what I heard from the second podcast they were talking about the same thing. But the difference is there were two people, two professors from BYU, one from is a lawyer, and the other one is a professor. The first one, his name is John W. Welch, a lawyer and also a professor of law at BYU Law School. And the other one is Lynn Hilton Wilson, got a PhD in theology and American religious history. And very interesting, the minute that John mentioned about this story, that the other guy was harping on it for half of his podcast, blaming the manual for this year for not covering that scripture and the reading of about Nephi and what happened. And I said to myself, he didn't get the answer because he didn't read the scriptures. Seriously. I am 66 years old, going 67 this year, 2024. And this is the first time for me to get a satisfactory answer to my satisfactory feeling to my answer concerning what happened when Nephi came to try to get the brass plates from Laban. John Welch said, this is during the podcast, that the answer, because what Nephi did is as we all know, Exodus chapter 20 is the 10th commandment. And one of the 10 commandments said, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Exodus chapter 20, verse 13. Thou shalt not kill. And here in the story, 1 Nephi chapter 4, Nephi killed Laban. And John Wells, it surprised me when I listened to his to this podcast. This podcast called The Scripture Central, where Lynn Hilton Wilson and John Welch shared what the insights from the reading. And John said, the answer to this one is found on Exodus 21. So Exodus 20 is the 10th commandment, and it says, thou shalt not kill. And the answer is Exodus 21. Let me go to it, and then you can see it. Oh, he also say that with this scripture, it says, the law of excusable homicide is given. I repeat it. The law of excusable homicide is given. And he also mentioned that an exception to the ordinary rule is given here. Chapter 21, verse 13, it says, and if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. John said that the angel or the spirit who talked to Nephi to go ahead, because Nephi hesitated for 3 times. This is the second time. The angel quoted the scripture. Exodus 21, verse 13. The angel said, God deliver him into his hand, or your hand. That's the angel quoted from Exodus 21, verse 13. Very interesting. Because before that, Nephi says in 1 Nephi chapter 4, verse 12, and it came to pass that the Spirit said unto me again, this is the second time, slay him, for the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. For the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. That's when the angel quoted from Exodus 21, verse 13. If a man lie not in wait, not predetermined his killing of someone, but God deliver him into his hand. The Lord quoted from Exodus to go ahead in order for him to get the brass plates. This was not a pre-planned killing, because Nephi, in his 1 Nephi 4, verse 6, he said, I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do. Nephi didn't know what he was going to do, but the Spirit told him 3 times. But the second time he quoted Exodus 21, verse 13. It's okay because He didn't pre-plan this killing. That's the part that I just want to share with you in this in English language. And now I just want to switch back to my Tongan language to finish up my podcast with my own language. And I always feel comfortable with my own language. Thank you to you all for listening. Now I'm switching back to Tongan. Ko kore pe ke hufanga e ngai tala whakapapa. Ko tō ape whaafataku atu pe mo tau ki whare masiwan. Ke atange he motu ata i loko kita. Ke whakahoko atua e tau laukonga koi ki he wikeni. Ko laukonga ki he wikeni u kia ha mea whakahaware ke te au ko tau ono e ni. Hoko tau ono fitu i he wano ua whaa. O kureka ke umau e au hatari whakawhie maari e kia te au o wheka waki. Pea mo koe hae mea nai hoko i he taimine whakapongi ai. Me koe hahon uhinga. Whakapongi ai e ni whai are pani. Kai lava kene mau ai ai ngahi ulai pere palasa. Hanga pe koe ne o si whamatala ki mua o kou whanongo ki he tolahi. O ni ihi o kau palofesa i BYU. Pea koe fo i podcast e taha neu mamata ki ai. Mo whanongo ki ai. Ko haongo palofesa i ua. Ko taha koe palofesa i he mala e koni o theology. Pea mo e I got PhD in theology and American religion history. And the other one is a lawyer and also a professor of law at BYU Law School. Onga fo iua koe ni. Rolotonga ina whakamatala koe ke tohi uraki ni whaiwa uraki ke nima. Hau ke wahe wha, una whakamatala ai ki he whakapōngi koe ni e ni whai arepani. A hiri koe ni mamata ki ha podcast ma ke heia e tō taha pe e whawhitui pe. Ko tupe ko taha pe kau palofesa. O me mei koe wahe ua ne whakamatala. Koe ne whakamatala pe kai ke whia maari e. E kai ke ase whakamatala ki he whakapōngi e ni whai arepani i he tohi lesoni pe koe manual ko ia ki he wano uawha. Wetai mua ne whanongoi ki he wahe koe ni John W. Welsh pe mo Lynn Hilton Wilson. Ne upehe ke te au ke lau he tō tahia koe ni e whorofora ke re mau. Poini mai e John Welsh. Koe tari ki he whehu i koe ia pe koe hae mea nai hoko. I he hau koe ani whai whamatala i he te whito i whakauka whika nima o pehe. Nā e tataki au e he lau maari e. Whamatala ia e uraki ni whai vai wha vesi ni maa ke tawalo. Ni hau koe ni whamui mui ke whinga koe ke mau ai ulai pret palasa. Pea whamatala pe e ni whai o pehe. Vai wha vesi. Uraki ni whai. Vai wha. Vesi ta haua. Ne pehe ai. Pena e hoko o pehe. Na e toi wholofola mai he lau mare. Kai. Whamatala ia e ni whai. Ko ene hau koni koi ki he o ilo koni a repani. Na kakene ilo ia ia koe hae mea tene whai. Kana e tataki pe ia e he lau maari e. Ke whakahoko. Wa ta wha. Wa. Uraki ni whai vai wha. Le whapalangi ua si ai. Ko i asi le whatongo. ai kupau koe honga teu i he rea whakapalangi, toi liliu ke rea whakatonga, ke whakahoko ata e tau ai wai. Ka koe fwoi, taimi koe ne whakahoko ai koe, ano whakahoko ang e angelo, e he whalau maria ki a nifai, ke tāmatei, are pani. Oku asi fokia e he tau, tohui e sotosi wahi wanoa, e whekau e hongo furu. Ko taha, wahi wanoa ve statolu, e fwoi whekau kou pe, oua na ake whakapō. Ka behe e palofesa koni e lao, me biwa iu. Ko fwoi tāri ia koe ki he, mea koe ne whakahoko koe e nifai, oku asia i he tohi e sotosi wahi wataha, ve statolu. O pehe ai. Pea ka pauna i kai la masi ia e ha tangata. Kana e tukuange ia e o tua ki hono nima. Nei kai ke la masi e nifai arepani. Ka koe whakahoko nge koe e angelo hono hua, tuoua, e he lau maari e. E kou he ki he whakahoko e fwoi ngā ue. Na hanga he angelo of he lau maari e, o whakahoko ange kia nifai. Ai fwoi ko ngagoni e exotosi wahe wataha vestaha tolu. Ai au pehe, na e tukuange ia e o tua ki hono nima. Ko wahet men, he ku osi tuange e o tua ki ai kene whakahoko ia. Pe tok tua tolu ia ne talanga ko lere iange ke mate e tō taha iha. Au hafu puranga kakato. Koe nai mea koto kone te koe ke vahe u ke ni. Ku tuko to ai ke tawaki. Ko inga he koe o ware o fia la. He kuhanga e he vahe koe ni ai ongo palofesa biwa iu. O tari ai whehu i koe na ihe e ku whakaukau. Me he kamata a ngā pehono lau o tohi tapu. Pea mo tohi a moramona. Pehono lau o tohi a moramona. O whekau aki pea mo tala noa koe ni i he uraki ni whai wai wha. Pehe e he palofesa. O kia i he rea whakapalangi. Kai ke umau ki hono ori li whatonga. Pehe e he palofesa. The law of excusable homicide is given. I he fwoi case koe ni. Pea ne toi pehe, an exception to the ordinary rule of killing someone is so exceptional. Koia e ka inga, o kou whima umbe ke wahe atu ko ngai koe ngai taula, talu tupu. Te kei ke umau e kari totonu, mahino pe ia koe, i he taulau koe tohi mamuna, koe whekau e otua. Ka kuhange koe lau, i pehe e he keimi neu, a kei a koa i Tonga, pehe taha ka palofesa. Ka pau te ke lue i he hala, o kulere mai ha pasi. O e ngata peho o si o ke lere mai e pasi. Whia mau ke ilo pe o kulanu ha, ko hai e whakauri, ko kakai, hai kakai, toko whiha o kui loto, lanu ha e pasi, u mea u whehu i kotoa ko ia, o ku whia mau ia ke hangau. Pa ku hange ia koe fo i whehu i koe ni. He ku hanga e ni whai ia, o mau i ai taha ngai whikau e hongo furu. Tā koe i he wahi wanoa ia o exotosi. Tā koe kuhanga pe e siho mai o mai tari i he wahi wataha vesi taha tolu mo taha wha. Ka inga. Si e kutui o kia ni i he unau mau. Ko ngā koe ngo palofesa koe nana wahe. Tarange he palofesa lao. Ki he palofesa taha. Nai te gai ke ilo e koe eni ki mua ko toki ilo i pehe ku talatu. Ta tau tofu pe eni. Pa moi ku whanongo koe ni ke whakamatala. Ko ngā he koe tau mo ui pehe taha kau profesa koe ni. piwa you Hawaii. Always look beyond the surface of everything. Hange beia koe whamatanga koe palofesa koe Tonga. Onga sio tu pe kurere mai pasi pe ngatai. Sio pe ke toe sio pe ke fehu. Ha we ngai fehu i ke ata mai feka wa ke we me au ke sio ki ai. Foi fehu i koe ni be o e whakapo. Ka koe koe tari ia o asipe ia. Ai koe whekahi ngo fulu he wahe wanoa tohi exotosi. Koe tari ia o hau pe o mai pe e sihova. I wahe ua taha ve statolu mo tawha. Ka pau na ikai ke la masi e toko taha whakapō. Ai toko taha koe tene hanga. Ai toko taha teu whakapō. Ka pau na ikai ke ne la masi. Ka tupu kosope. O ki ai pe whunga ke hao. Pea whakataha tu ki ai. Pea moe. Tukuange ia e o tua ki hono nima. Tukuange ia e o tua ki hono nima. Pea hao pea toko taha e koe. Ai ko sio atu i he taimi ni tau nofo mai ne ngai tau lahi. Tau ngata pe tau tolo. I he fo i whakamadara. Na i tukuange ia e o tua ke whakahoko. Ai fo i o wau koe ni. Ka koe whakamatala koe ni ko tamalao. Pe tene lawa o veteki. Ai whahinga whakamatala koe ni. Talamai he whekahonga fulu. Oua whakapō. Ko tohi ulaki ni whai vai whaen, he kukanga ai uikeni, mei he wahe ulaki ke wahe nema. Pea kou to'o maeni, pa tene hanga ia mau kotoa e ku taimi he, ka pau e ikai e mate telefoni au teke osi whamatala. Ka te unofo e whamatala, ko hinga ko lau ka. E ku tari, ke umau ai tari, ke he e ku whehu i. Ko hea koa e mea na e hoko. Mōni pe ia ko hanga lau koa e kaupārangi. It's right, it's correct, but it's not good enough. Whie mau pe ia ke te sio o owa atu i he mea ku te sio ki ai. He koe e koe taurea tonga ki ai. Hai pake ki i mo ui huu huu. Oua whai sio e kautama koe me eua. Sio noa pe. Sio pake whakakaukau ke mea o ke sio ki ai. Paka mau kua hao palani ke ha mea ke whakahoko. Try to look beyond the surface of everything. In that case, ma'u ai e kutari ko e ni pea talu e ma'u whanongo aniafi ke fo i wahe ko ni o ni hanga tari mai ai fo i whakapona na e nofo i a hoku loto mo i ku whakakaukau. Ki he whekau e honga fulu, whakahoko mai ai ou e whakapō. Kai asia i uraki ni whai vai whā vesi. I vai whā. Whenga koe ni whai ke mau e ngai puret palasa. O whakahangea i he lau maari e ki ai. Kene hanga o tō ai mo ui a rea pani kai lava kene mau ai ulai pret palasa. Ka toi tari mai pe ia i he exotosi wahi ua taha ves taha tolu. Ka mau na i kai ke la masi pe te waki whakapō. Pea koe te tāna ki atu ki ai, pea nai tuange ia e o tua ki hono nima. Asi pe ia i he whamatala koe a hangelo. Vai whāwes ta haua. Pea nai hoko pe he nai to wholofola mai e lau maari e kia te au. Tāmate ia, he kua tuku ia e ki hono nima. Wa hoko mai pe, pea me he tohi e exotosi wa he tātolu, o ange ki a nifai. Kene whakahoko ai whatongia kai lava kele mau ai ulai pret palasa. Ko ia ko ngatanga bia e tau, wahe ki he wikeni, pea ko whamaloa tu i hon mo mea mai, ka mo mea.